Hey guys, it's the facelessbeanie, and in this one I'll be going over Caliban's abilities and a couple of builds as well. Let's get into it. Caliban's passive allows him to gain adaptive armor that resists up to 50% of a specific damage type dealt to him by an enemy, similar to adaptation, but weaker. This resistance buff gradually drops by 2% per second if Caliban does not receive any damage for 5 seconds or longer. Keep in mind, this buff applies to the whole team. Let's move on to Caliban's first, which is Razor Gaia. This channeled ability makes Caliban rotate in mid-air, shooting out lasers which render him unable to move or use his weapons. The lasers span out across a limited radius and deal some slash damage to affected enemies with a chance to stagger them. For each enemy hit, Caliban heals himself at a limited rate per second. Razor Gaia can be accelerated by holding down the default fire key, like Revenant's Dance Macabre, and will store a small amount of impact damage for every second the ability is accelerated. Upon hitting the fire key again at a targeted enemy up to 50 meters away, all impact stored is dealt to the enemy while yeeting them and causing a knockdown effect. Laser radius is affected by ability range. Damage dealt and healing rates are affected by ability strength, while activation energy and energy drain per second are both affected by ability efficiency. Caliban's second, Sentient Wrath, sends out a shockwave outward from Caliban that travels for a limited distance and causes any enemy touched to be lifted in midair. Affected enemies will also be dealt a limited amount of impact damage, but more importantly, a damage vulnerability debuff will be applied to them. This ability cannot be recast until it's traversed outwards to its max range or has hit the maximum target cap. Yes, it has a target cap. The damage vulnerability debuff will cause enemies to be more vulnerable to all incoming damage for a limited time as long as they are still lifted. This ability does not depend on line of sight and will phase through terrain and obstacles to reach targets. You can cast its ability while channeling Razor Gaia. Hitting it while channeling Razor Gaia will not only cast Sentient Wrath faster, but using Razor Gaia to hit enemies that are lifted will detonate them in a destructive blast. This doesn't do much, but it's cool. Range is affected by ability range. Damage and the damage vulnerability debuff percentage are affected by ability strength, and notably the max target cap mentioned is also affected by ability strength. Of course, duration is affected by ability duration. Let's move on to Lethal Progeny. Caliban spawns up to 3 sentient allies in the form of Conquilists. These Conquilists adopt his Warframe rank multiplied by ability strength. The Conquilists have damage and health multipliers, and they last for a limited time before they self-destruct. While within 25 meters of Caliban, they recharge his shields at a fixed rate. This will flow into overshields, but will not work if Caliban has no shields. They merely recharge his shields, so he needs to have some shields in the first place. If the Conquilist wanders too far away, it will teleport back to within range of Caliban. 3 Conquilists can be activated at any one time. They all have their own duration, so if one runs out, you can recast it to spawn another one. All 3 will contribute towards the shield recharge. Conquilist's rank, shield restore per second, and their damage and health multipliers are all affected by ability strength, while duration is affected by ability duration, and just to point out, you cannot mod for more than 3 Conquilists to be active at once. Finally, Fusion Strike. Caliban's 4th ability causes him to expel 3 streams of energy over a limited range, converging into one toward the location of your aiming reticle. Each stream deals blast damage to all enemies it hits, and upon convergence will deal even more blast damage before imploding and dealing more blast damage. The implosion occurs when full convergence happens and will pull in all enemies within a limited range and create an energy field which will last for a limited time. Every single enemy in this field will lose a certain percentage of their armor and shields up to 100%, which can be achieved with 200% ability strength. This debuff is permanent, so once enemies are stripped of their shields and armor, they won't regain them even after the ability runs out. Damage dealt and shield and armor reduction are affected by ability strength. Stream range is affected by ability range, and duration is affected by ability duration. Time for some builds. This is a 4 Forma build with an Aura Forma included. You can just use a regular Forma and mod it to the Xenuric polarity instead. However, this is completely optional, you can go ahead and save a Forma if you want. What I'm going for here is mostly strength with balanced duration and range. The goal is to get Fusion Strike's armor strip to 100%, which of course caps out at 200% ability strength. Range is for Sentient Wrath and Fusion Strike's AoE. Effectively, with more range, you'll stun and strip more enemies. Duration is mainly for lethal progeny. Since your sentient allies are unlikely to die, all that really hinders them is the ability running out too soon. Duration also keeps Fusion Strike's armor stripping field active for longer, allowing more time for enemies to get close and be stripped. Another forma will allow you to slot in Umbral Intensify if you want. Since we are casting quite a bit, Natural Talent allows us to do so without being too clunky. This is the optional slot, however. Brief Respite isn't necessary, but assists with shield gating, especially with the Decaying Dragon Key and Rolling Guard. Lethal Progeny's shield recharge is additional protection, but remember it doesn't charge shields when they're completely depleted. Basically, when your shields are depleted, you roll, be invincible for 3 seconds and allow your shields to be charged up again, and repeat. This should keep you alive with the Steel Path in mind. Arcanes get energized, and then the other is whatever you want it to be. Replace Brief Respite with any other aura mod except for Corrosive Projection. Since we are stripping armor, we don't need Corrosive Projection here. Rolling Guard's invincibility will also help you cast your abilities since you're defenseless while casting. Utilize the armor strip and crowd control of Fusion Strike and Sentient Wrath. Lethal Progeny helps distract enemy fire, helping you reposition and survive longer, in addition to the shield recharge. Razor Gaia is almost never used except for when you want to mobilize yourself and cast Sentient Wrath quicker. However, you will almost never do this. Just to display clearly, you'll see the Acolyte here spawns into the energy field of Fusion Strike even after I've casted it, and immediately armor is fully stripped. So to replace Razor Gaia, the Helminth steps in. With Caliban's energy problem and the fact that we are casting so frequently with a small energy pool with negative efficiency, Spectre Rage and the augment mod Spectral Siphon should help a little bit. Spectral Siphon grants a 50% chance for enemies killed within range of Spectre Rage to drop energy orbs. So cast Sentience Wrath once enemies are helpless, cast Spectre Rage, and then kill them. That's your free energy. Alternatively, if you want to focus on more damage instead, Breach Surge is great as well. Armor strip, then cast Breach Surge, and watch the fireworks. Finally, a less sexy option is Empower, which merely buffs your Conquilists and helps make Sentience Wrath just that much stronger. Regardless, all these three abilities will be much better used than Razor Gaia in its current state. With that, I hope to help you out. This is the Faceless Beanie, signing out.